tomorrow. Democratic Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger is a former CIA operative. She was in a classified briefing of her own on this today. Good to see you. I hope you and the family are healthy during this time.
We are. I hope you're doing well, and thank you for having me on.
So, Spanberger, tell me what to think about all of this.
Well, I personally have a lot more questions than I have answers, and I think it's incredibly important that we have a full briefing in Congress and that we welcome intelligence officials. I would love to see Director Haspel come in from CIA and speak to what threats do or don't exist against our service members and U.S. personnel overseas.
Could it be that I should be shaking a finger at both sides on this? The AP is reporting that Bolton briefed the president about this in March of last year. Okay, so like maybe he forgot, or the White House forgot, or there's a new group at the White House so they can't get it straight. But I also am hearing that there is a chance that Democrats who have been made aware of this over time as well. And if the first part is true, then they're lying to us at the White House again, and the president fell down on his own duties. Okay. If the other part is true, that means that the Democrats are bringing this up only now. Why? Is that political opportunism?
Well, I think there's a couple things to consider here within context. And the context is that over the past couple months, the President of the United States has had reportedly 5 phone calls with Vladimir Putin. He has lobbied for Vladimir Putin to attend the G7 summit, potentially rejoin as a member of that organization, bumping it back up to G8. All the while potentially knowing or not knowing that there is the possibility that the Russian government and Russian intel services are willing to pay bounties for dead Americans. So I think recognizing the greater context of what is happening and the actions the president was taking, that's one of the reasons why I am so incredibly concerned about this.
What do you make of this idea, Congresswoman, that this may not be new, that this is something they've been pursuing for some time, and the intelligence has been significant but not compelling? You have experience in both worlds.
Yeah.
What does that smell like to you?
So I'm a former CIA case officer, as you mentioned in the intro, and just to speak about how intelligence comes to be and how intelligence reports like the ones discussed in public reporting would come to be is there's a collection of information, and that information is collected from human sources and liaison sources and signals intelligence and all of these different means, and it is overlaid. It is overlaid to form a picture and to corroborate what we know from one source, to validate what we hear from another source. And as that picture becomes clearer, the intelligence becomes potentially something that needs to be briefed in one place or another. So I think that the fact that there may have been elements of a story kind of putting together pieces of a puzzle is completely aligned with the way that larger intelligence and finished analytic products are produced, which is you get source documents and finished intelligence reports and put them together in order to create finished intelligence that goes out to the intelligence community or potentially to the president.
The hand-wringing from the Democrats on this suggests that this is something that we know and that this has been slept on by the White House, maybe out of political convenience. Do you share that opinion, that this is something that is so well known that it should have been discussed and acted upon? Or wouldn't the intelligence community have been taking this in a different direction if it really knew for sure about this?
So I think that the question has to be, what actions do we want to see from the administration, from the President of the United States, when there's allegations that a foreign adversary nation, and one that he's been quite friendly to, is putting bounties on the heads of U.S. service members overseas? And I'll tell you what I want to see. I want to see a full denunciation of these, the potential that this may be true. And I want to hear, we are going to get to the bottom of this. We are going to turn over every stone to determine, even greater validity, whether or not it's true or not true. And we will take actions to defend our U.S. service members who are risking everything. And,
Understood. Understood. Yeah. But hold on one second, and then sure. I'll let you finish. But you wouldn't want the president going after Russia for something if you didn't think you could prove it. Because then what you'd be handing him is a stick to beat our president and our country over the head with, right? Where if he went off, hey, we think this is true, and he goes out and says it, Putin's going to say it's a lie. That's what he always says, right? And then now it's on us to prove that it's true. So if you, from the intelligence side, aren't there, would you really be wanting the president to deal with the allegations?
So I think in sort of digging deep into the question that you're putting out there, one, Putin's always going to deny whatever adverse activity they are, malign efforts they are taking to undermine the democracies, be it ours or other democracies across the world. They're always going to deny. That's part and parcel of what they do. And the other challenge is that the whole concept of intelligence is we come by it clandestinely. And so there may never be a time, as it relates to kind of highly classified information, that we can fully disclose how it is that we, and I say we in the larger sense of the United States, can disclose how it is that we know something to a high degree of confidence, because some of those sources and methods cannot be revealed. And I'm speaking in generalities to this question about what is the step forward and how do you become or go public with information. That's not always going to be possible when you're dealing with highly classified information.
Spanberger, how is it that I feel that you are always asking more questions than you're answering on this show? Are you working some kind of CIA Jedi mind trick on me where I ask you a question, you say, well, I think the question is, and then you answer that question when it's not what I asked. But at the end of the day, here's the last thing. Congresswoman, I appreciate your participation on the show. Where should we be as Americans hearing this information? Where should our heads be in terms of how serious this is and how concerned we should be that somebody slept on a real threat to kill our fighting men and women?
So I would dial it back a little bit. We don't even have to be talking about somebody slept on this information or didn't. I think that's not even the major focus. The major focus is right now out in the public sphere, there is the allegation, and there's reporting across an array of media outlets in great detail that speaks to the fact that Russia has allegedly put bounties out on the heads of American service members and civilian personnel overseas. And so where we should be on this is we should all be wanting more answers. We should all be saying we want members of the intelligence community to come before Congress. We want to ensure that there are briefings. We do not want to politicize or drag this into a partisan fight. This is the lives of service members that may or may not be threatened. We should all say, if this is true, it is outrageous and it is an affront to everything that is the base of our democracy. It is an incursion. It is an assault by a foreign government. If this is true, we are united in our effort to reject it and to hold Russia accountable. And we are going to be measured and we are going to be focused. But what I haven't heard, and in the briefing today, what I said to the White House Chief of Staff is I want to hear that coming from the White House. I want to hear that coming from the president. We are getting to the bottom of this, but if this is true, it is unacceptable. And that's where we should all be as Americans. It isn't a political issue. It isn't a partisan issue. This is potentially life or death for the children and the family members and the parents of people back home in my district. I represent hundreds of thousands of Virginians. Many of them are veterans, many people deployed overseas. This is about protecting our own national security and protecting our friends and neighbors who are in a war zone in harm's way. And the notion that that risk to them is heightened because there might be a bounty on their head should be objectionable and something that every American rallies behind to oppose.
Hopefully we can get to the bottom of it. Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger, Democrat, Virginia, thank you for being on Primetime as always.
Thank you very much for having me.
All right.